Hello, and welcome to the Click and Obey podcast. I'm not sure if any of you know this, but GameStop stock kind of surged. I, of course, invested my entire life savings in it, so this will be the last Click and Obey. Oh, no, I didn't. I was way too cowardly to do anything like that. But if you did, you probably made quite a bit of money. Mesh, how much did you make off of this?
I went full YOLO, as they say, as the kids say, um, and I dumped quite a bit in there, and I made a decent chunk. I'll say that. Um, I didn't actually go on GameStop. I went with Nokia and the Naked Company, and uh, currently still with AMC, and so I've seen some I've seen some gains. I'll put it like that. So it was pretty shocking that it actually worked. I figured I might as well just gamble. We'll see what happens because there's so many people that were doing it. I was like, well, the numbers are clearly in the favor. The momentum is clearly in the favor of people investing in these things, and so I just dumped it in. I was like, let's see what happens. I'll ride the roller coaster.
The real annoying part to me, right? So I saw GameStop when it was somewhere between 40 and 70. I can't remember exactly what it was when I was looking at it, and I was like, man, I could buy in, but nah, it's probably not going to go up that much more if it goes any, and then it'll crevice back, and then of course it shoots to like 300, 400. I'm just like, oh, I'm so stupid, and I didn't bother with the other stocks. I was also too scared of that. But the one thing I should have felt comfortable with, and I don't know why I was dumb enough not to do this, was like Bitcoin, of course, surged after this because any market volatility, it instantly increases Bitcoin, right? Also, we are not giving advice here. We're just shooting the shit.
Yeah,
But it's just
we
like
are shooting the shit.
I, I just know that inherently that Bitcoin goes higher off market volatility, and then I think it went up like 5,000 in a day. It's like, oh, that like okay, you want to be scared of GameStop makes sense. You want to be scared of Nokia, AMC makes sense. Fucking Bitcoin was like a lock, and I just was so
Oh yeah,
wasn't even thinking.
yeah. I mean, Bitcoin is doing great. One thing that did suck, I will disclose this. I was actually heavily invested in some of the altcoins. Not just I had like a tiny bit in Bitcoin because it's so expensive, and it always kind of was. Like even at its dip, it was still in the 5,000, 6,000 range. But I had a lot of altcoins like Ripple, and I had a ton of Ripple actually. And the thing that sucked was like the altcoins for one below Bitcoin, and I think it was because of the scare of regulators coming down and slapping one of them to make an example. And they did with Ripple, um, which was unfortunate for me, but because I saw it go all the way up to like 90 cents, and then the SEC filed a lawsuit. So yeah, crypto is never quite that obvious, although I think Bitcoin at this point is separating itself from the rest of crypto quite a bit. Like it's not even, it's almost in its own category. It's like legit crypto and then crypto.
Well, you know how you know it's gonna win because nobody calls it crypto; they call it Bitcoin. It,
Yeah,
it,
that's
it's
true.
it's just like if you have a game station, like people call it Nintendo. Like my dad used to call it like Nintendo, right? He didn't even call it PlayStation. That's how popular Nintendo was. That's like Kleenex. That's like some of those other brands where it's like that's not even Kleenex isn't even the name of the thing. It's tissue. That's what you actually use as a tissue. But everybody calls it
Yeah.
a Kleenex because that brand is so popular. So
Oh yeah.
so Bitcoin's gonna win this. It's basically over.
Yeah, it's like Jello or Oreo.
Yeah.
Yeah, I might, you might be talking me into just moving everything over to Bitcoin and eating whatever losses I had on altcoins.
Once again, not making suggestions, but yeah, if I was gonna do any more, I would I'll have to look at it. I need to set up my Coinbase because Bitcoin's always a thing I think about, but never something I've really delved into yet. But it's one of those like, the more our market goes fucking wonky, like I might want to diversify just a little bit more than I
Yeah.
do, because I don't think there's any like even if there's a Great Depression, say that was to happen again, right? That's 50%. That's what you would lose on average, assuming you're not in a single stock, right? Assuming you're diversified across
Right,
the market,
right.
you'll lose 50% at a Great Depression level. Like, okay, I can survive that. That would suck. That would be really fucking terrible, but I can survive it. But it'd be nice to survive it a little bit better if I had like some
Yeah,
Bitcoin, some gold, silver, etc.
yeah, just to help you balance it out. Yeah, I've also got some shorts on the Dow, um, uh, just sitting around, because you never know. But again, do not take investment advice
Yeah,
from this podcast, please.
yeah. We are professional tech people with a side order of politics. I don't know
Yeah.
how much you believe in your investment strategies, but I mine are just basic. Follow the S&P index and go from there.
Yeah, mine are. I gamble a little bit. I follow mostly what D Rush follows, and that's it. But yeah, I wanna talk about
Oh yeah,
what's
let's
going on
get
with
into some
GameStop.
GME.
Yes, the Reddit revolution. I think that's what they're calling it.
Oh no
I
no no!
love
It's
this.
sorry. It's the Reddit insurrection. It's
Oh, that's
essentially as
right.
bad as the Capitol. That's basically what happens here. It's as bad as the Capitol.
Yeah, this is a digital attack on the cathedral, basically, and known as the Capitol, the new Vatican of the United States. Um, yeah, it's wild right now. I think I posted this on social media and some other places, but it's raining red pills right now. It is raining red pills. People have seen the exposed. They have exposed the bare metal of the ruling class with the action that they've taken here. Like basically, long story short, for the podcast listeners that haven't really understood what's going on, so shorts are basically bets on companies doing bad. Um, and hedge funds do a lot of shorting to make a lot of money. And sometimes you can kind of send signals if you short like enough. Like if enough people short, you can send market signals, and that can cause things to happen like something going down to near zero, which of course benefits the people shorting things. And so some folks on Reddit decided, hey, we're going to squeeze these hedge funds. They're calling it a short squeeze, and they just started pumping a few stocks that haven't been doing well, namely GameStop, also AMC, Bed Bath and Beyond, the Naked Company, Nokia, uh, BlackBerry. I almost called it Blueberry. It's been that long since it was relevant.
I didn't even know that
Um,
was still a thing. Quite honestly,
it's
when they
still
said
a
that, I was
thing.
like, wait a minute, what? What year is
Yeah,
it?
I don't even know how, but yeah, so it's just a handful of stocks. But anyway, so people were pumping it, and GameStop went wild. AMC is currently going wild, and the other ones are up higher than they really should have ever been. But this prompted like crazy reactions.
Yeah, I mean, the ridiculousness of the reactions is what has amazed me, right? Like, you have always the fake progressives and Elizabeth Warren who comes out and says, oh, we need to look into this and check out this market manipulation. Kind of bypassing the fact that hedge funds have been market manipulating for forever, right? When you get like Jim Cramer, or not, is it Jim Cramer? I forget what the hell that guy's name is on CNBC. He's about, this stock's going down, this stock's going
Oh
up.
yeah, Mad
You,
Money? Are you talking about
yeah,
Mad
yeah.
Money?
Meanwhile,
Yeah,
buying against or for whatever he wants to manipulate the market with, and other people going on CNBC and doing that same thing, right? It's like that's totally legit. We don't need to look into that one. But this one, when redditors get involved and make money off the hedge funds, that's a big
yeah,
problem. That's the shit we
yeah.
got to regulate. That's for sure.
Yeah. And so I think Glenn Greenwald, who we often refer to, put it best in a recent interview. He was like, this unites kind of the 99 percenters from way back when and the Tea Partiers from way back when on the left and the right, because, um, the left, they typically, their dream is that government steps in and regulates purportedly to help the small people. And on the right, you know, they tend to be more like, hey, free market, or at least free market until globalism screws us, um, and get government mostly out, so that the little guy doesn't get squashed by terrible government regulations. And that's not what we have. What we have is a ton of government regulation in favor and basically written by big corporations to squash out their competition.
Yeah, and I thought Dave
Um,
Smith brought up a good point on this when he was talking on his podcast. He's like, listen, if we had a free market system, the hedge funds would have gone under here. Like that's the way we rail against them is actually using the free market to capitalize
yep,
on their dumbassery, right? We
yep,
see when they're trying to put a company out of business via these shorts, which is not always what that means, but essentially is too, right? It's like it could be an overvaluation of a company, but in some cases they're actually just trying to take this company under so they can make a shit ton of money off of them. And so these redditors found that, squeezed them, got money, and now they're talking about doing regulation to make sure that can't happen. It's like, well, who does that benefit? Like you're trying to cover for the mistakes and the hubris of these hedge funds. Why is that good for the economy? right? Why is it not better for that 14? I heard it was 70 billion was the number that totally across everything, right? GameStop, AMC, the stuff you mentioned,
Wow.
that's what got squeezed out of these hedge funds. And it's like, how is that not better to go back to everyday people? I just don't understand. Like, and that's where the crony capitalism comes in, which
Yeah.
realistically isn't even crony capitalism. If you have the state managing the market, that's fucking socialism. I don't understand why
Yeah.
people don't understand. That's what that is.
And that's what I was saying. The bare metal has been laid bare. It has been exposed, and people are seeing it. And it is raining red pills, and whether or not people realize it or not, which is awesome. Um, awesome to see.
Well,
But
I think it's raining red pills, but here's the question: what's going to come out of this? Because regulation's coming.
good question.
Anybody
Yeah.
who doesn't believe that just has been, they're part of the ostrich farm, as I like to say now, right? So it's
Awesome.
like, their heads in the sand. It's going to happen because you see these, fake ass people like Elizabeth Warren already talking about it,
Oh,
and
she's gone. She's gone. Like she had to have lost credibility with that, and if not, then
well,
yes, they are
I,
part of the ostrich farm.
I,
That is
I,
insane.
I told people that's like she as as big of a proponent against Wall Street as she is a Native American, which is to say 0.001%. Like she is fake as shit. Believing her is just so stupid. You know she'll lie to you. She did, or the very blatant and very stupid lie, and then tried to act like she was Native. It's just whatever. I'm getting off on a tangent here. Elizabeth Warren is a terrible person, but it regulation's coming, and the only question is, what are people going to do about it after that happens?
Yeah, it's. I don't know. This is that's a good point actually. It's like, what if certain people like Elizabeth Warren are able to kind of manipulate words or whatever it is that they want to do to make it sound like, hey, actually, we're really worried about the small people here, and the real way to do it is more of this kind of crazy regulation that will actually benefit hedge funds and huge corporations. Um, and they just play word games and they kind of get around it. Because word games are very effective, as we know from I don't know the past year. So yeah, I wonder if it's just a series of dialectic traps that are going to happen that wipe this out. That is
Oh,
a good point.
yeah, they're gonna try to say it's for the little guy, just like you said, because on shorts, for people who don't understand them, it's like you can lose infinite money because you're borrowing a stock. You think that it's at $10 today, it's gonna go down to $5. You borrow the stock, you you basically say, I'm going to pay you back this stock at some day in the future, right? And you sell it off, get your $10, wait for it to drop to five, you buy it back, you give the stock back, right? So you made $5. The problem, of course, is if it goes up to $400, you just lost $390, right? So that's
Oh yeah.
the infinite potential loss of shorts, which, yeah, in theory can hurt anybody because it's gambling, right? Like there is no maximum of which you could lose. But the thing is, the hedge funds are the ones who do this. This isn't an everyday person kind of thing that happens. So to say, oh, well, we got to save people from themselves, it's like, yeah, we've been doing that with marijuana. We've been doing that with other forms of gambling, like sports gambling. We've been doing that with basically all kinds of stuff that hasn't worked out. So why is that a thing we should do here? I need that
No.
explained to me. I also still need to explain to me why sports gambling is not a thing. People watch sports every Sunday, all Sunday, know way more about football than they do the stock market. They can work on, or they can bet against the stock market. They can't bet against football. Makes no sense to
Yeah.
me. It's crazy.
Yeah. It's totally crazy. Yeah. I'm tired of this safetyism. It's crazy. But I am glad that this is happening. Even though the reaction I think is what is going to be what you're saying. It's going to be predictable. It's just going to be the state stepping in, lining up to protect the cathedral, our new priesthood, rallying around the cathedral. So it kind of sucks in that way, but I still think that there is an impact that has been made on a chunk of the population. I'm eyeing people that are kind of close to the center, who were kind of pulled far to the left during the riot at the Capitol, and maybe spit out the red pills that they were starting to chew on. Then maybe they got a new pill to chew on here, a new red pill, and so that's kind of my hope.
Yeah, I'll still be very. The thing is, and I mean, I look at this. I was talking. Yeah, I was talking about this the other day because people ask me, it's like, oh, well, are you a libertarian? It's like, well, I believe mostly in the libertarian philosophy. I associate with no party, right? I can give a shit the party affiliation or any political trappings of that, right? I just think like freedom is the best thing that we can have, largely because that's the thing that has the highest upside and the lowest downside most of the time, right? And so,
Yep.
what that being said, I do think moving to the Libertarian Party probably makes the most sense for a lot of people because that's actually what they believe in. They just don't know it.
Yeah,
But
they don't know it.
right. But then the next thing you look at is everybody thinks, oh well, but without government, this might happen. And so that's always the sticking point is, oh well, maybe this regulation's bad, but if we didn't have government, what about this? What about smoking? What about the tobacco industry selling, cigarettes to kids? And it's like, you think regulation is what stopped that? Like, is that a serious statement that, oh yeah, they put that thing on the back of the cigarettes and now kids don't smoke? It's like, but that's not at all what happened.
Yeah. And
Like,
also, I think one thing that people get confused about is like even with the Libertarian Party, it's like you can only be libertarian within the bounds of the Constitution, anyways. And so they should sell it like that. So their answer to that should be like, okay, well, that's the state's job. Regulations happen at the state. Now, generally, if you're anti-regulation, you're anti-regulation, but that should be the answer. And I don't think it's a cop out because you are in a constitutional system. And by the way, and this is coming from someone, I mean, I definitely consider myself more libertarian in the past. I think now I'm what they call lib pop, which is like libertarian populism.
mm,
It's like the shift is that instead of just being more or less focused on centralized government power, big, large government centralized power, you're extending that to any type of centralized,
mm,
large, big power.
makes sense.
I think that's where I've shifted a little bit. But, anyways, back to the main point. Like, the purest libertarians would argue that you don't need a court system at all. And we're not going to get rid of our court system in the United States ever. So there's just some constitutional limits that libertarianism runs into here, which is totally fine. I don't necessarily want like pure anything. Um, I don't think purity works or perfectionism at scale. So that's what they need to sell it at. Really, I almost feel like they should rebrand the party. They should call it like the Freedom Party or the Liberty Party, really. The Liberty Party would be a good one.
Yeah, it's one of those things like I I understand the philosophy of libertarians. I think, like you said, purity is a problem in the sense of like, oh well, we should just remove all things of all at all times. It's like, okay, if every one of us in the world believed in that, that would work. But the problem is, you have all these people who believe in some form of government who are not going to act the way you want. So inherently, your message is doomed to fail, right? Because you need basically complete buy-in to buy into anarchism, because otherwise, you're going to have governments that then run wild in other forms and fashions and encroach on you, right? So it's a question of like, how can you? You're not trying to manipulate the power, but you are trying to like get the reins on it in some form or fashion. Now, if you can get your own society based on anarchism, great. I just don't see it, right? It's not a likelihood. Uh, I did hear a Michael Malice quote the other day. It made actually he was quoting somebody else, and I can't remember who he had. But the constitutions or the Constitution is like gun free zone for conservatives, meaning it's like they've been encroaching on the Constitution for forever, right? Like uh, the Second Amendment says Congress shall make no laws that infringe, and it's like there's a shit ton of gun laws, right? There's a shit ton of laws that prohibit like the owning and management of some firearms. It's like what happened to the Constitution? Where's it at? And it's like, oh yeah, because it's only applied when it wants to be applied, right? It depends on the
Yeah.
state, depends on the local level, so it's
Right.
like, yeah, that I agree with the philosophy in the document or of the document, which is the Constitution of the United States. It's just it doesn't get applied except when they want it to anyway. I mean, illegal search and seizures. Like, how many of us are getting spied on? Fucking everybody. So,
Oh, yeah.
like, what?
Yeah.
Since when has that been a thing that we actually cared
Or
about?
or on the other side of that coin, lying under oath. People lying under oath about spying, for example, and just totally getting away with it, getting nice cushy jobs at CNN or whatever. Yeah.
I've told people there is no way I would convict if I'm on a jury. I'm never convicting of perjury. It's done. I'm never convicting of incitement. That's a stupid fucking law or a stupid fucking thing where it's like, oh, I spoke so somebody did something. Give me a fucking break.
Yeah. Speech is
It's
violence. You don't know that? Come on.
uh, I didn't. Oh no, have I been doing it wrong this whole time? But it's like
Yeah, I think so.
I couldn't imagine if I was on a jury, like, unless you did a violent act, I think I'd just say, you're innocent. I'm done. I'm done here. Like, my job is done because I just don't care. And it doesn't go both ways. Insider trading. That fucking, what's her, Lori Loeffler? Like, the one who was running for a Senate seat in Georgia? Like, we know she profited off inside
Oh
information.
yeah,
And fucking, what, Dianne Feinstein was,
Dianne
like, selling
Feinstein.
stocks in
Yeah,
hotels after they knew they were going to have to shut down hotels. It's like,
yeah,
oh, imagine that. Did anybody go to jail? No. So why should I ever send anybody to jail? Like, that's a stupid
yeah.
thing. If you're on a jury and you're sending people to jail for nonviolence, I think you're kind of an idiot at this point. Like, the elites don't go to jail. Why should anybody of
Right.
us?
And I'm glad you brought this up because I want to tie it into a point that I was making earlier, which is that the red pills, and I think when I say people are taking the red pill, I think they're starting to see the crack that exists and that has been distracted from this whole time, which is that there's a class struggle going on here. There's the elites and there's the proletariat. That's what it is. And we're distracted by, systemic this and systemic that and this phobia and that phobia. That's just an effort basically to split us all up within ourselves. But this is the real thing right here. This is the if you get down to the bare metal, the brass tacks, it's the elites and it's the proletariat.
Yep.
And so yeah, and I mean, like I said, 99% movement, the Occupy Wall Street movement back in the day, also the Tea Party movement back in the day, they were both rooted in that. Now they had different philosophies or whatever, but the root was the exact same. And I'm glad to get back to that root, honestly. I hate all the other stuff that's been coming up, just the stuff that tears, I guess, what I would call the proletariat apart and benefits the elites. So
I'm really
that's
very curious how this works out in culture because I don't know if you saw, but they instantly tried to put them. They tried to scapegoat Wall Street Bets, which is the Reddit subreddit that kind of like started this whole thing. They tried to immediately scapegoat them as white supremacists and Nazis and antisocial, like whatever. You throw out any term, they're just hoping any one of them will stick. And it's just that it's not working anymore. I think people are starting to realize like they're onto the game of like, oh, they got pulled off Discord for hate speech. It's like,
right.
what?
Yes.
What are you
Yeah.
talking about?
Yeah, exactly. That's a great point. It's like, oh yeah, suddenly these Redditors had a Discord where they were chatting and Discord shut down their Discord server because of hate speech. And this has been a thing that people have been warning about for a while. Like this whole thing about, oh, big tech companies having control in a way that they didn't before. Like the internet is the new roads, um, and they can kind of shut down parts of the infrastructure as a private company that in public life we didn't have the ability to do that before. And so like with this, it's you know I know we've been doing it. We've been pointing out the absurdity of all the woke shit, hate speech and whatever, and big tech companies using that to silence people. And now it's happening here again for something that has nothing to do with systemic racism or any of that woke shit. Um, and we've been worried about that from the get go. We've been worried about, hey, it's not just going to be social justice stuff that gets people punished. It's going to be they're going to take this stuff and they're going to use it everywhere else. And you know, here we are talk about finance, and they're using that shit on people for finance. It has nothing to do with social justice. So that's the part that I'm hoping people will start to see is like, hey, remember all that what you thought to be paranoid speak about big corporations doing this stuff? I fucking told you so. I fucking told you so. We fucking told you so. Many people told you so. Look what they're doing right now. It
It's
has nothing to do with social justice. They're smashing the lower class down, using the power that they were using to do stuff that you thought was all right back in the past. Now you don't think it's all right. And this was the problem from the get go.
yeah,
This was the problem from the get go.
it was just so
Always.
short-sighted because oh, well, they're just trying to make sure that white supremacists aren't there. It's like, yeah, who the fuck do they label as white supremacists? Anybody who disagrees. Guess what? Whenever the 1% gets threatened in any form or fashion, they're just going to use that hate speech term. That's why as soon as you see stuff about hate speech as potential laws, police, politicians and other groups like that are already thrown into the laws almost instantly. And it's like, oh yeah, because they're gonna fucking use the laws against you. I don't understand why people don't realize the laws that get put in place are always used against us. I can't believe that more people don't see that. But they just think that inherently, if you write a law, it has to be for a good reason. And it's like, well, it is. The good reason is to protect the interests of the people who are already in power. It turns out people who aren't in power don't write laws, so it's only going to be people in power who benefit from the laws. Why can't people see this obvious cycle? It still is mind blowing to me.
I don't know. I don't know. But that's what I'm hoping. I'm hoping. Can we make that a word? Hoping. I'm hoping people will see it.
I like it. I'm down. Let's start it.
Yeah, hoping. Yeah, the hoping of minds. Maybe we should change the podcast name to that. The hoping of minds.
How dare you? Click and obey is here to stay.
I know. I'm just kidding. No. Yeah. I just that's my hope is that people will start to make those connections. It was like, no, this wasn't paranoid BS. This was the gamut all along.
Yeah, I I hope that has opened people's eyes. I think it has some, right? I think a lot of people are like, ugh, this is just disgusting, especially like with the way Robinhood shut down. You could sell,
Oh
but you
yeah.
couldn't buy. So that was pure market manipulation. That is so
Oh, 100%.
transparently market manipulation that if nothing happens, well, one, I doubt anything's going to happen, but two, hopefully even more people are just going to be like, what the fuck? Right? And it's obvious what they're trying to do. They know this is going to be a class action lawsuit because it makes no sense why you'd be able to do this. But they're hoping the class action lawsuit is maybe a few hundred million versus the billions they were going to lose. Right? That's
Right.
the
Yeah.
obvious thing that they're going for. And they know no fucking criminal liability is going to happen because it's a company. Because they're going to, how are you going to pin this down to one person? They'll all try to obfuscate blame and just say it was everybody, therefore it was nobody. And we know that works. 2008, 100% proves that works.
Yep. Yep. That's a good point. Yeah. The Robin Hood thing was unreal. And even now, they've like brought back the ability to buy these stocks, but they've limited how many shares you can buy,
Yep. They're
which
already,
is
it's
the
funny,
same thing.
they're beta testing in real time to see what the regulations should be. They're going to try to figure out, of like, oh, during this short squeeze, should we limit the amount of money that can be lost? Well, how would we do that? Could we limit the amount of buys? Could we just limit buying,
Yep.
period? Like, what do we need to do to make sure this doesn't happen? They're fucking beta testing this.
That's incredible, man. It's incredible. But yeah, I I just want to throw this out there again. I think we told you so. Like this is the problem with empowering these tech companies to have um, basically oligopoly like control over all the major functions um, that our society has, including stock trading. Like this is crazy. I don't think this would have happened if 30 years ago. I really don't.
Yeah, that's probably true. I'm trying to think. I mean,
It'd be hard to get the thing started, like start, Reddit was here to start this thing. But I'm saying like if there was some sort
right.
of craze that started, they've had popular movements happen before without the internet. But I'm just saying like barring that, you know, I
Yeah,
feel like there wouldn't just be one company that would just make such a sweeping, massive change that would destroy everything
right.
or
Yeah, the way
destroy the
stuff
momentum.
happens is just so different now because also there's so many little subcultures because the internet allows it, right? As opposed to I wouldn't even call them monocultures, but just like you had big things happen, right? Because obviously people still went out. They went to rallies. They somehow knew about them. Feels crazy they could even find them today, given that Google Maps is how you find everything. But like those kind of things happened, but these subcultures they occurred, but just in less. Right, you couldn't be like, oh well, I'm in called Arkansas, and I'm going to connect with somebody in Idaho or Seattle or wherever, right, with this subculture I have. But now that can just happen instantly. We don't know where anybody from Wall Street Bets necessarily is from, but it's like you could be in Texas, you could be in all 50 states, like all coordinating across this, right? And it doesn't matter. Location doesn't matter anymore. So that's the interesting thing of just like where's this going to go? I come back to it, right? It's like, okay, so we know Wall Street Bets can coordinate this. There's nothing limiting it. Assuming there's no regulation, which there will be, just go ahead and jot that down. That's going to happen. It's like, what is the next thing that kind of what's the next domino in this piece? Because everybody saw just kind of the bullshit that is Joe Biden. Like, I mean, most people don't
Yep.
believe in the election. Whether it's true or false, I don't know, but I don't really give a shit either. No, neither of those candidates were any good. You have this when the system's already decaying. Like, the government is not acting like a government that's in control, realistically, right? It's like, oh, we got to have 25,000 National Guard in the fucking Capitol. And it's like, that's not what a stable government feels like doing.
Yeah. 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 They're building like a permanent fence, I guess what you might call a wall around the Capitol.
That's fucking racist.
That's so racist. So racist. No, but um, yeah, it's they are behaving like a government that's losing the grip of people that it governs, and I think it's deserved.
Oh, it's
I mean,
100%
it's
deserved, right?
very clear what we're looking at. It's very clear what we're looking at. And here's the thing: I think you're right because I'll say it again. I think you're right because something inevitably has to come out of this in the form of regulations because well, nothing will ever be the same again. People figured out, hey, I can do this easily on a subreddit. I can just go to a subreddit, see what everyone else is doing, and oh hey, we it turns out we actually like theaters, and people are making massive amounts of money while the rest of us are suffering, including this theater company. Okay, well we'll just all of us bring it back together, and make a bunch of money together. It's like it I I just don't see it ever being the same again. I think stock trading has forever changed.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, now that people know of this mechanism, and I mean, I knew about shorting, but I didn't know a ton, right? I've had this massive crash course over the last 2 days on exactly what can occur and how it happens, and what you go through whenever it's happening. But it's like now that the public's open to this, like they're gonna have to do something because these hedge funds can't short anymore. They're gonna have to be shitting their pants because the next Wall Street bets will just come in and be like, all right, we're gonna mobilize the populace because we know we can do it. We already did it once. So guess what? Like we'll keep fucking you over every time you short and keep taking your money. And it's like, oh well, shit, that's a play we've lost. Can't do that
Yeah,
one anymore.
yeah. So I don't know what they're gonna do. I mean, part of me wonders if maybe they'll just it would kill all the hedge funds, but if they just ban shorting just to get around this phenomenon.
I think what they're gonna do, and it's gonna be so fucking shady because once again, remember that whole principle of oh, you got to protect the small person, you got to protect the small investor. That's the key thing because that's what they're gonna run with. That will be the narrative. So what they're gonna do is limit the amount that a single investor can buy or do any of the shorting of. They're not gonna limit hedge funds. So they will also protect. So by doing that, they're going to try to protect hedge funds against anybody going against their short by limiting what a normal investor can do. And they're also going to block regular investors from actually doing a short on things that they should be able to do it on. Right? It's like the 2008 financial crisis. The Wall Street guys actually shorted against the banks doing these shady loans, which was correct because it was overinflated. But like they've also been shorting everything and trying to manipulate the market all the time. And now they're going to not allow any of that from individual investors. I would bet you anything that's well, I don't want you to short me, so I shouldn't say I'll bet you anything. That's the kind of regulation that comes in.
Yeah, I think that's 100% correct because they can put that under the guise of protecting the small investor too. They'd be like, look, we're limiting your volatility because you can't buy that many shares, so you can't lose all your life saving all at once, or some such reasoning. I'm sure they'll come up with something.
Oh yeah,
Um,
they'll either
yeah,
have to like you'll have to jump through hoops. You can invest in a 401k that's controlled by a brokerage in some form or fashion, right? But you will not be able to do a brokerage account unless they can link to your regular accounts to know that you can cover any shorts or buy, even just a standard buy, right? Even say you're just buying GameStop, buying $500, you're going to have proof that you've got enough capital to do this investing. They're going to make investing safer, right? It can only be a percentage of what you actually normally do, unless, like I said, it's through a brokerage. If you do an S&P 500 index through Vanguard, you'll be able to do that. If you do something through
yep,
E-Trade, you'll be able to do that. Yeah, they'll get your fees, but they will not let you buy against companies because they want to manage the market, not you.
yep. I 100% agree. So I uh, I want to bring this back to the point you made about just about, I guess, how this is going to shake out. Like, I wonder if people are looking at this and, there was a lot of people that I'm trying to think. Yeah, there's a lot of people who, when Parler went down, like a lot of companies collaborated to take Parler down, basically. Their defense of that was this very strange, like pro-corporate defense, like, hey, there's a terms of service, and they didn't follow the terms of service, and it's well within their rights to do this and do that. Suddenly, all these people who had been like anti-big corporation their whole lives were like the most fervent defenders of big corporations and their rights. And apparently, it became okay in their mind um, for Big Brother to exist as a corporate initiative rather than a government one.
Oh yeah.
So, as a government one, it's evil. As a corporate one, it's fine because terms of service and laws governing corporations allow it to be. And so they would conflate the moral case versus the legal case. They'd be like,
What?
well, they're allowed to do this,
Don't be fooled.
therefore it must be moral.
If the government did
Um,
that too, they'd be more than happy to celebrate the government in some form or fashion.
oh
Well, it's a
yeah,
law. We
I'm
voted
sure.
on it. It's as long as they
Yeah,
get the outcome they want, they don't care about the rest.
I think they conflate like legal with moral because it benefits them or
I know
whatever.
a lot of
It
fucking
lines up with them.
libertarians do because that's still a debate I see all the
Yep,
time. It's like,
I see
oh
it.
well, they're a private company, so we should allow. It's like nobody's fucking debating this, right? It's
Oh
like
yeah,
nobody's debating the legality. It's like what?
yeah. No,
Why? And libertarians are suck at it because for the most part they've been
yeah.
run by fucking incompetent people for forever. It's
Oh,
like,
forever.
which is also why I would never like. I'll pay a little bit to the party to like, okay, I like kind of what you're doing overall. I wouldn't call myself a full member, but whatever. I'll give you a little bit of dues. I like the candidates you put out there for the most part, but they're run by fucking idiots a lot. So it's like
Oh, they're
I don't
totally
want
run
to be
by idiots.
bound to them in any form.
Yeah, no, um, I don't either. I have the same exact feelings. Their conventions kind of say it all. If you ever seen them, it's like a mix of like FurryCon, Comic Con, and I don't know, I don't know. But anyways, my main point with that was, people suddenly became like the ultimate corporate spokesmanship uh, providers, and I just they conflated the legal with the moral, which they're not 100% mutually exclusive or whatever. But like, I just wonder if right now they would do the same thing. Like, hey, Robinhood can do this legally, or you know, Webbull or any of these other ones, any of these other trading apps can do this all legally and make all these restrictions legally. It's well within their rights. And yeah, it's market manipulation, but it's legal, and so therefore it must be moral. You know, um, I
One,
wonder if they'll make that argument now.
of course they won't. They'll say, "How could they do this? Somebody's got to go to jail over it." And then they'll say, "Oh, by the way, we need more regulation." It's like,
Yeah,
you fucking
it's like, hmm.
simpletons, you
What
simpletons.
about the what about the we need more regulation argument applying to, AWS and Amazon and all of that? See, that's what I'm trying to get at is I just think it was hilarious how they're just like, yeah, it's legal and therefore it's moral. And now they're like, it's legal, maybe, but we should have more regulations because it's immoral. It's like, okay, all right, you're
I,
just cherry picking shit.
I,
Everything is arbitrary, and I don't believe you.
that's why I say the Democrats at this point are just '90s conservatives because they believe law should be
Yeah.
what the morality is, and it's like they should not be the fucking same thing, right? It's just
Oh,
like
not at all.
it's like
Yep.
society should determine, like, hey, we don't believe this is moral, therefore we're not going to allow it, and that's fine. And the law should basically stay the fuck out of it. Like, there should be
Yep.
this bare minimum of laws, which is like, hey, 99% of us agree that murder's bad. Actually, it's really like 99.999, right? It's like, therefore, we can have a law. Like, the only laws you should have is shit that basically everybody and their mom agrees on. Anything else? No, get the fuck out of here. This is just vote with your feet, vote with your money.
Yeah, it's like basketball courts. Like the laws should be like the lines. Like, okay, you can't go out of bounds here, and you can't cross half court once you've already crossed it with the ball. You know what I mean? Like it should be that. It should just be bounds. It shouldn't be this like micromanagement of like, hey, we're going to tell you what is moral and we're going to enforce it so that it doesn't happen so we can protect you from everything basically. And you can live this super comfortable, safe life that we
Yeah.
promise you if you follow exactly what we say. And we're doing it for the betterment of everybody. Um, yeah, I completely agree, man.
it's funny you use the basketball analogy because I don't know if you listened to part of the problem yesterday. I don't know if you listened to it at all, really, but uh,
I jump in every once in a while, but
so
yeah.
so Dave Smith was bringing up the analogy, right, of like, okay, so what's really happening here is think of this as like the NBA, right? And say that we said all basketball must be played in the NBA. We're going to regulate it, right? It all has to be there, which is kind of like the stock market as of today. And by the way, the top three teams get all the draft picks. They get their best pick out of anybody who's coming out of college, right? And they get to the first chance at any free agents. Oh, and by the way, the refs also are paid by those three teams. So the refs inherently kind of like call fouls for them all the time, right? Or call fouls. You know what I'm saying, right? It's like they don't call fouls against them. They do call fouls for them that always help them. And so people are looking at this, and this is the, in this case, like capitalism is basketball, and the hedge funds are the top three teams, and the refs are the lawmakers. And they just look at it, it's like, well, what, we got to get more laws. These top three teams, they just keep winning. They keep cheating. We got to get better refs in here. It's like, you idiots. The refs always fucking favor them. That's why they always keep getting bigger. That's why none of the policies we've implemented have hurt them ever. They just
Yep.
keep growing. Like, at what point are you going to realize it's not capitalism? The problem's not with basketball. Like the problem is that we have this dumbass like regulatory system that always helps them.
Yeah, it's back to your original point of like the laws will be used against you, the proletariat, not against the elite. And so, yeah, man, I think you're right. It is going to be wild and interesting to see what happens from here. I think there's going to be regulations. You know, the elite are going to protect themselves. They're probably going to fool a lot of people, you know,
Oh,
by using the right words and everything. But I am wondering how many people we on our side um, will pick up, and that's kind of what I'm hoping for.
I honestly I think none, and here's why. Not that people aren't red pilled. I think that's 100%. People love to war with each other. People love the
That's
bloodletting.
true.
So they're going to side with either the progressive caucus or the part of the GOP or the libertarian. They're all going to stay in their own little shelters. And so they're not going to coalesce at all, right? Because the thing is, you need a coalition here to make this work correctly. And they just don't do it. That's why Occupy Wall Street and the Tea Party both failed overall. It's because if they would have thought, hey, wait a minute, I probably need to talk to my enemies who also agree with me on this about getting it done, then it would have gotten solved. But they didn't, and it's going to happen again. People are way too invested in beating the other team and have been for forever. And that's why like the shit we've seen since 2016 is so fucking brilliant. We've got two sides that are at war with each other. There's no way they could come together.
Oh yeah, divide and conquer at its finest. You might be right. You might be right. I'm always holding on to hope that there's going to be some event or something where we reach a tipping point where it's like very clear that the number one problem is this class problem, and really everything else is a distraction from it.
Yeah, I have my hope more in like the technology side, and that there are some of these kind of like, I don't even want to call them underground because Wall Street Bets has what, like 3 million subscribers. It's not exactly
Yeah,
underground,
it's
right?
not underground.
But people are going to keep finding these exploits because we're just seeing as the cathedral tries to grow itself, they're going to have weak walls, right? And so it's like you just got to keep finding these places to prod and eventually get it to collapse on itself. And then after that, that's when the real fucking show starts. And I don't know what's going to happen at that point. Um, whether that's also going to be this year, next year, 10 years, 20 years, I have no idea. But we just keep seeing so much exposure. It's like eventually these walls are going to crumble. The cathedral's not going to stand for too long. It's too stretched thin.
Yeah, I mean we've been seeing we've got a window into the inside. It's probably starting in honestly starting with the bailouts under the Bush administration. That's when we started getting a window kind of inside to things, which is like wow, we just bailed out these huge companies with massive amounts of money twice. Remember, it was like 700 billion, and then
Oh,
Obama had to do the other 700 billion. And
yeah.
I think that was the first window that was kind of opened. And then, of course, 2015, Trump going down the elevator. I think that is what he did was open the window even a little bit more. That you just like looked in and just saw how crazy things were, and he just was a bull in a china shop, basically breaking shit all over the place. But you were able to see it from the outside for the first time, and now it's like the window just keeps widening. He's gone, and the window keeps widening.
Yeah,
And I think you're right. I think we're just hitting this point where it's like, what happens when everything is exposed? What's the next step?
I think the big equalizer has just been the internet because now it's so easy to track and show the bullshit, right? I mean, you look at what 2004 weapons of mass destruction, and it's one thing that the government lied. That shouldn't be a shock to anybody, but how they got covered by the media should expose to everybody how fucking bought off the media is and has been for forever. Because now that you can see, it's like, oh yeah, that was bullshit. And in 2008, like the bailouts and the way the New York Times talked about how they were so necessary, and it was so great that like we were going to do this because it's just our economy depends too much on it, and we know that's bullshit. And it's just like all these stories that keep on piling up from these mainstream places, and they're losing viewers and they're losing trust, by the way, at a massive decline. So it's like the cathedral cannot get its message out because nobody believes it, and so it's like that long term this system will collapse. The only question is when and how that it
When
doesn't
and how?
collapse. But it's like so it's good news, but I think the internet has just spread it because, like, if you want to get into a debate with somebody who's blue pilled and says, "Oh, no, this is fine," this is the government did this, and then you just show them like, "Here's the time they lied. Here's the time they lied. Here's the time they lied. Here's the time they lied." It's like you can just go down a fucking list. It's just it makes it so much easier to do this kind of thing.
Yeah, I think you're right. Well, hey, on that note, I think it's a good place to leave the podcast. I think it gives a lot of people, hopefully, a lot of people, a lot of things to think about. Um,
I think for the next, I like to get as close to an hour. We're at 47, so I'm going to put on repeat. Here's the time they lied. Here's the time they lied. Here's the time they lied. Just to show exactly how many times the fucking government and like the media that backs them have lied to the American populace to get whatever result they want.
yeah, yeah. That's the funny thing is, even if you have an overwhelming preponderance of evidence, um, when you post all of it, it just to people that are so thoroughly blue pilled, it just looks like conspiracy theory, even though it actually happened. They're just like, oh, well, I don't like you, so none of the stuff you says matters. And this is just looks like a large rant, and it's just a conspiracy
It,
theory, and I
it's
can easily dismiss you because I don't
it's
like you.
yeah, it's too jarring, and it takes them years to finally like process and like they're like, oh shit, I remember that time he told me about these things. But
Yeah,
you're right. It's a good place to wrap up. I think we've covered a lot today.
yeah, indeed. Well, I'll do what we usually do here, which is to say, pump us up to your friends. We're on every single podcasting platform. We're exploring some video platforms as well, like YouTube. We'll see how that goes.
Library and
But we're
Odyssey
gonna
as
go,
well going forward.
yeah, Library and Odyssey as well. We're gonna hedge on the videos there because for obvious reasons. But we're gonna explore going there as well. So we're gonna be available basically anywhere you can consume podcast content. Um, we're on Facebook. You can like and share us there. And as always, stay safe. Click and
Peace.
obey.